Hello everyone, Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. My name is James Anthony, and today I'm going to be giving you my top 10 favorite movies from the year 2022. And I was going to record this probably in a couple of days, but I'm going to San Diego, and I had the intent of recording it, but as I just said, I'm going to San Diego, so there just wouldn't be time, so I'm recording it early on Christmas Day, which is the only day that would work for me. So here it is. How this is going to work is I'm going to go through all of my honorable mentions, in which I'll have about 5, and then I'll go ahead and give you my top 10 favorite movies from the year 2022. Now, I've been seeing a lot of people kind of hate on this year for not having very good movies, and just having a year where it felt like so many big properties just churned out not very good properties. Star Wars, Marvel, Halloween franchise, Halloween, like what some people say. I enjoyed Halloween Ends, but it's got some flaws. And I've got to say, I loved this year for movies. This is one of the few years where I was just able to check out a bunch of movies that I wasn't really excited for, and then just loved so many of them. It was really hard picking a top 10 because to me, this is probably going to be an unpopular opinion. I thought that there's some incredible movies from this year, and my top 10 is very stacked, where a bunch of them could go back and forth. I've got a pretty solid, top 3, and after that, and maybe even a top 5, but after that, I could switch places on tomorrow. So here are my honorable mentions. My first honorable mention is Prey. This is the Predator prequel based in the 1700s. And, this is a movie that when I heard the concept, I was like, okay, interesting idea, but I don't know if it'll be very good. I mean, this is the last stand for the Predator franchise before I'll just throw the towel in the bin. Because ever since the original, they've just disappointed me. And while I do enjoy Predators, it's got flaws and it's a fairly generic movie. So when I sat down and watched this movie, I didn't look at the reviews before it. I was floored by the trailer, and so I sat down and watched this movie, and I fell in love with this movie. Is it perfect? No. I think it's got some flaws. I think there's some logic flaws, and the way that they explain camouflage in this, first time watching it, I was kind of confused, but overall, I really dug Prey. My next honorable mention is X, Ti West's X. Now, you will see Pearl higher up, which will shock a couple of people, but I didn't see X in the theaters. I saw a trailer for it in front of Scream, and I was like, okay, it's just an A24 horror movie. They're probably just going to make it all artsy and stuff, and it's really not. It's got some artsy stuff in there, it's got some messages, but to be honest with you, it's not at all. And so the kills here are great. The characters are some of the best in recent memory. It's one of the best slashes in recent memory. I had a couple of issues with the third act and how it actually ended. And that's probably what kept it from being in my top 10. But yeah, a great horror movie and a great kickoff to what hopefully could be a great trilogy of movies with Maxine coming out potentially next year. Speaking of Scream, my next honorable mention is Scream 2022, or Scream 5, whatever you want to call it. I walked into this film with no expectations. I thought the trailer was okay, but I walked out loving it. I think that this is easily the best film since the original. I think that this is easily one of the scariest movies since the original, in the franchise. This has the best opening, or at least second best compared to the original opening kill in the franchise. I mean, opening kill, no one dies in the opening, whereas the first time since the original where I actually felt dread, I felt tension, I felt scared. So I loved Scream. A couple issues with the plot and how late the legacy characters came in, but overall I'm very excited for Scream 6 coming out next year. Black Panther Wakanda Forever is my next honorable mention. This was once again a movie that I didn't really have a ton of excitement for. I love the original movie, but I was really on edge when they decided not to recast Chadwick Boseman And while he owns that role, that character is too important to just kind of write him out. So I walked in not expecting it to be great, and it's awesome. It's one of my favorite MCU movies. It's in my top 10 MCU movies. I might even put it close to the top 5. I genuinely loved it. I thought it maybe is better than the original, and it feels so fluid, and it works so well, where it feels like this was the plan. And to see that Ryan Coogler can just do this again just gives me all the hope in the world that maybe he can direct one of the Avengers movies, and that hopefully we're on a better track for Marvel in which we've had a pretty rough 2 years. My last honorable mention is Barbarian. This is a little horror movie that was released back in September, and I didn't have any interest in it. I didn't even check it out in theaters, and so I waited for it to come on to streaming, and I saw the trailers, and I was like, this just looks like a generic movie. Like, I think I saw half of the trailer because I was kind of done with movie trailers for horror movies, especially spoiling movies. So I saw like a bit of the trailer. It's like, I'm not watching this. Read the synopsis. I was like, this just sounds generic. Went and watched it a couple weeks ago, and I love this movie. It takes some of the wildest turns you'll ever see in a movie this year, and in a horror movie ever. I mean, it's some batshit crazy stuff goes on in this movie. It takes a while for it to get there, and then I think that there's some logic issues at the end, especially. But man, was this just a fun ride, and easily the top 3 horror movies of the year, and it barely missed my top 10 movies of the year. Alright, now that we're actually in the top 10, I want to start this list out with a film that a lot of people probably heard of but didn't actually see. And to me, it's easily the funniest movie of the year, and it is probably the most surprising movie of the year for me, and that is The Menu. This is a black comedy, thriller, drama, whatever movie, parody kind of. It's weird. Movie about a bunch of rich people that go to this island to essentially just eat rich people food, and the chefs start to play a game with them, played to perfection by Ralph Fiennes. I don't understand how he hasn't won an Oscar for this. If he doesn't get nominated for Best Actor for this, which it looks like he won't, I'll be furious. I mean, he's incredible in this. And they go to this island, and he serves them food, and he starts to play a game with them. And all the while, you've got Anya Taylor-Joy's character, who's kind of the lower level citizen, or she's like, she makes decent money, but she's nowhere near the rich amount of people. She makes nowhere near the amount of money that these other people make. And she's the smart one there. She's starting to figure things out. And the way that this movie just unravels its strings, and it slowly starts to tell you what's going on. But it never takes itself too seriously. It's very funny. The entire way through, I was laughing. It's got some great messaging, but it doesn't push it to the forefront and shove it in your face. I thought it was brilliant. As I said before, Ralph Fiennes is great. Anya Taylor-Joy is great. Nicholas Hoult is maybe the standout character in the movie, where he just plays this absolute douchebag who pretends that he's an expert in all this stuff and all this food, and so when he's told to actually cook something, he can't, and it's incredible. It is truly one of the best movies of the year. It's possibly the most surprising movie of the year, and I was really hoping that this wouldn't get pushed out of my top 10, and I'm glad it didn't. So number 10 is The Menu. Number 9 is Robert Eggers' The Northman. Now, this is a movie that I had no expectations for until December, when the first trailer dropped. And when that first trailer dropped, I was like, I'll watch it and see what it is. As soon as I saw it, I was like, I need to see this. This jumped up to, I'm pretty sure, my top 5 most anticipated movies of the year. I was so excited for it. I went in on that Saturday, the day after it came out, watched it, and just absolutely loved it. I thought the characters in it were great. I thought that the action, while it's far and few between, is incredible. It's very well shot. I thought the music and the cinematography were just incredible. I thought that kind of the visceral nature of just the story, where it's Hamlet, but it's really, really dark Hamlet. It was great. It's got some great mystical aspects, but it's not like other Robert Eggers movies where it's kind of just weird. Like, my main problem with The Lighthouse is I don't know what I watched. It just is the weirdest movie I've ever seen. Whereas this film, it has some of the weird stuff. It's got like some of the Valkyries, and it's got some of the mystical, like fighting skeletons, whatever. But it doesn't feel out of place. It feels naturally like it should be there. And so by far, this is easily my favorite of Robert Eggers' movies, probably by about a full star. And I would love to see this movie get Oscar attention. I don't think it will. If it had gotten released probably right around where we are now or a couple months ago, it would have. But since it was released in April, there's just no chance, and it deserves the love that it should get. So, number 9, The Northman. Number 8 is what for the majority of the year was my favorite horror movie of the year, and that's The Black Phone. This was one of my most anticipated movies of the year. The trailer came out last October, and I instantly fell in love with the concept of Ethan Hawke playing the villain. So I couldn't wait for it. When I found out it got delayed from February to June, almost like 4 months, almost 5, I was heartbroken. But they showed it at Fantastic Fest 2021. Got rave reviews. Everyone was saying it was just an awesome horror movie. I was so excited. And I was on a trip when it came out, so I wasn't able to see it until a week after. And I was really worried while I was on the trip. I was like, okay, maybe those first reviewers had kind of those nostalgia goggles on, or where it's like, oh, I got to see it first before anyone else. And the reviews still came out, more and more came out when it officially released to the public, and everyone was loving it. I mean, so I didn't hear really anyone hating on this movie. I heard people say they had a lot of problems with it, and it wasn't as good as some people said, but most people liked it. I went into this movie, and I loved this movie. I think that Ethan Hawke is easily the new horror icon of this decade, you know? I think that him and Pearl from X and Pearl, which it's crazy that we got what I would argue 2 new horror icons in a year, are the characters that most deserve that. I mean, Ethan Hawke gives possibly the best performance in his career in this movie. He's incredible. The Grabber is one of the most terrifying villains we've seen in a while. And the kids in this movie are so great. They're funny, they're snarky, they've got the attitude, but they don't, and they're cute, but they don't have that kind of weird childish acting where it's you can tell they don't have experience. They are great in this movie. I love this movie all around, and while I'm sad that Scott Derrickson dropped out of Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, I'm incredibly happy that he got to take up this job, and I will take this any other day over another Doctor Strange movie, especially Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness. So number 8 is The Black Phone. My number 7 is going to be a lot lower than what most people have it at, and that is Top Gun Maverick. Top Gun Maverick is probably my favorite straight up action movie of the year. And I love this movie. You know, I went into it expecting it to be good. I expected it to be better than the original, but I didn't expect it to be as good as it was. I think that the action here is great. I think that the characters here are great. I mean, everyone said everything about this movie already. It's kind of hard to talk about it. I mean, there's no question why it made almost $1.5 billion. It was the movie of the summer. I think that this is going to help out both Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1 and 2 at the box office next year and in 2 years. I mean, I love this movie. For a while there, I did kind of get in the phase of it is overrated because people just wouldn't shut up about it. But I've gotten out of that. I acknowledge that it's just a great movie, and it's one of those summer blockbusters that it feels like we never get anymore. Where it feels like, okay, we spend so much time getting Marvel and DC and all these big franchises and universes where it's like, it's so refreshing to get a movie like this that is gonna come out and make so much money, but it feels like a movie that could have come out in the 80s. It's proper action movie. It's one of the best movies of the year, and it is my number 7. At number 6 is Pearl. This movie is incredible. I had no expectations for this movie. I saw X and was like, that was really, really good, but people overhyped it. People said it was like the best horror movie in years, and I was like, this is a really, really good movie, but I don't think it's as good as everyone was making it out to be. I saw the trailer for Pearl, and I was like, I have no interest. Why are you doing this? I thought Mia Goth, I always thought that Mia Goth playing 2 characters, while it was a cool idea, it didn't always pay off, and it was kind of weird. I went in and saw this movie and was floored. This is easily my favorite horror movie of the year, and we've had so many good horror movies this year. We've had Scream, we've had The Black Phone, we've had Barbarian, we've had X, of course we've had Prey. If you want to call that a horror movie, I will. Alright, and we've had Smile, we've had Terrifier 2, we've had Nope, what some people would say. It's just a great year for horror, but this is easily my favorite horror movie of the year. It's just a movie that does the Joker formula perfect. And what I mean by that is you get a character that is so broken and wants to succeed so badly that they will go to any length. And the performer performs this perfectly, where you want to see them succeed, but the way they're doing it is not the way to go. Where you're watching them and you're conflicted because you're like, I want to see them succeed, but I don't want to see this, and I don't want them to be doing this, and I want them to stop for their own good. And it's so brilliantly made. You know, Mia Goth, I thought she was good in the first film, in X. She's brilliant in this film. There's a 5-minute monologue scene that she has near the end that is Oscar-worthy. I am going to be pissed, and I know this is going to happen, that they're going to snub her, but I'm going to be pissed if they don't nominate her for Best Actress. She's incredible, and because it's a horror movie, they won't nominate her. It pisses me off. Ty West, in my opinion, does a far better job in this film, directing it, than he did in the previous film. I love this movie. This is my favorite horror movie of the year, and I'm shocked that I'm one of the few people that prefers it to X. And so, yeah, I think Maxine is coming out next year, and Maxine has jumped to one of my most anticipated movies of next year. I'm so excited. So, number 6 is Pearl. Kicking off the top 5 is All Quiet on the Western Front. I love this movie. This is probably one of the movies that I won't rewatch a lot on this list. If I could pick the one movie on this entire list that I'm most likely to never rewatch, it's this movie. I will rewatch it. I'm not saying I won't, but if I had to choose out of all these top 10, all right, which one would you never rewatch? I'd easily choose this film. This is a hard movie to watch. This movie is brutal. It's violent. It shows you the horrors of war. I mean, it is possibly... It rivals 1917, in my opinion, as one of the greatest war movies of all time. 1917 is my second favorite war movie of all time, and it truly rivals it. It is a masterpiece of filmmaking. It might be better than the original. It is a modern-day classic. The characters in it are incredible. The visual effects are incredible. The score is very quiet, but it moves you. The cinematography, I hope that this film gets nominated for cinematography, and it should win, because it's just incredible. I mean, the way it shoots everything, where it puts you in there, it feels like you're there, is great. The action scenes that are few and far between are great. In my opinion, there's never been a tank battle scene, including Fury, including Fury, there's never been a tank battle scene that's been better than this. The tank battle scene in this is awesome because you can feel the dread and the terror and the horrificness of, oh my god, these things are like they're killing machines where they are unstoppable, where they're just mowing guys down, and that is possibly the highlight of the movie. So I love this movie. It is a 5 out of 5. From here on out, these are all perfect. And I love this movie, and I didn't think that you could beat the original and there aren't many remakes that can do it, but this one did. So number 5 is All Quiet on the Western Front. Missing out on the top 3 is Elvis. For the majority of the year, this was my second favorite movie of the year. I've always liked Baz Luhrmann, but I've never thought he was great. I think that Romeo and Juliet is heavily overrated, and I think that Moulin Rouge, while it's really good, it's got a lot of flaws. I'm one of the few people that thought that until Elvis, Australia was his best work. And even though it takes 4 days to finish, I really enjoy that movie. So when he was announced that he was going to be directing the biopic of Elvis, I was immediately intrigued. So my mom and I, we went to go see it. And Baz Luhrmann's her favorite director. We went to go see it, and we were floored. We loved this movie. I went to see it twice in the theaters, and then I saw it once a couple weeks back. And each and every time it gets better and better. If you ask me tomorrow, this could be in my top 3. I loved this movie. I think that Austin Butler, what a breakout performance for him, where you can tell that's Elvis. There's a scene at the end when he's singing, it's the final scene, he's singing and it cuts between images of the real Elvis, and that cuts back, and it took me about 30 seconds after it cuts away from those images to realize, oh, that's not Austin Butler, that's Elvis. It really is. And it's not necessarily because he looks identical to him, but it's because he looks kind of like him, but his mannerisms, the way he moves his head, the way he moves his eyes, his eyes look very much like Elvis's, and the way he sings, of course, capture Elvis perfectly. Tom Hanks got a lot of hate for this movie. I thought he was incredible. I thought he was possibly one of the best villains of the year. And this is possibly the most exhausting movie I've seen all year. But that's the brilliance of it, where I watched it and I wanted to go to take a nap. I mean, I was exhausted all 3 times I saw it, where it puts you in the shoes of Elvis, where there's so much going on. There's just everything's attacking you at once, where you can't really comprehend it at some points in time. But that's what's so great about it. So I loved Elvis, and I hope it gets some Oscar attention because it really deserves it. So number 4 is Elvis. Number 3 is The Fabelmans. This, in my opinion, is possibly one of Steven Spielberg's best. It's a new classic, in my opinion. When I heard he was making a biopic about himself, I was like, okay, that's interesting, but a little bit pretentious. And then when I saw the first trailer, I was moved. I want to see this right now. Went to go see it with my dad, and while my dad wasn't as big on it, I was eating this movie, where it is just a true love letter to cinema and movie fans all around the world, where it's like, this is what his life was like. And while it's not necessarily a biopic, it's very much autobiographical. So I love this movie, and I'm pretty sure it's the front runner for Best Picture right now, which it deserves. Steven Spielberg, this is one of his best jobs directing since Saving Private Ryan, in my opinion. The cast here is great. Judd Hirsch is in for one scene, and he's possibly the best performance in the movie. Seth Rogen, I didn't think was going to be very good in it, and he's incredible. Michelle Williams is awesome in this movie. I'm shocked that they're not putting her in the Best Supporting Actress category, because if she was in there, she would win easily, because she's incredible in this, where they're putting her in Best Actress. She'll get nominated, but she won't win. Paul Dano, this has been Paul Dano's year. He was in the Batman earlier, and she was great as the villain. And he's in this, playing dad, and he's great in this. 2 very different characters, of course. But, I mean, just a great a great experience that really just shows the love that goes into movies, and how making movies doesn't have to start once you leave home, but it can last your entire life from when you're a little kid, and how it can grow from many different places. So I ate this movie up. I loved it, and I wouldn't be shocked if it wins Best Picture. My number 2 and my number 1, I went back and forth quite a bit, because they're both incredible movies. They're some of my favorite movies of all time. They are what I would call instant classics. So I had to decide, and if you have been following me for a while, you know what I'm talking about, or if you know me. But I have decided that my second favorite movie of the year is The Batman. Listen, I walked into this movie on cloud nine. I was so excited for this. All of the trailers are incredible. I still go back and rewatch them, and they all work. They're so great. I walked into this on the Tuesday premiere, on the IMAX premiere, where people all around the country got to see it on Tuesday in IMAX. And I went and saw it, and I was so excited. I sat down, and you could just feel the theater buzzing. And we watched it, and it was just 3 hours of epic moment after epic moment after epic moment. It never slowed down. This is the 7 of the Batman franchise. It's a detective movie, and that's exactly what I wanted. For so long, I've wanted a detective movie for a Batman film, and we've never gotten it. And they've constantly said over and over again, oh, this is going to go back to his roots, the greatest detective ever. And none of them have ever properly done that. While I love The Dark Knight, love Batman Begins, love Ben Affleck's Batman, none of them have ever done that. This is the first film to do that, and it does it perfectly. I think that the score here rivals Tim Burton's score, Danny Elfman's score from the Tim Burton movies, for best Batman score ever. I think that this is one of the greatest comic book movies of all time. I think that the mixture of practical and visual effects are great. The cast here is fantastic. You have Colin Farrell, who just gives possibly one of the most insane and wild performances of the year, but he's great in it, and he is possibly the standout of the movie. Selena Kyle, played by Zoe Kravitz, is great. She's possibly the best Catwoman ever behind Michelle Pfeiffer. She's neck and neck for me. I loved her in this. Paul Dano's The Riddler is up there as one of the greatest Batman villains on the screen of all time. He's great in it. You have even little characters like John Turturro as Falcone, in which he kind of is connected to everyone. And then, of course, Robert Pattinson as Batman. And he's my favorite Batman. I love this movie, and it really was hard putting it at number 2, but I had to decide. So my second favorite movie of the year is The Batman. And that leaves my number 1, which if you know me, you know what that is, and that it's obvious. My number 1 is Avatar: The Way of Water. This was my most anticipated movie of the year. It has been since 2017, and really it has been since I first saw it when I was 5. I love the original Avatar, and I was saying for years about how this was going to blow people out of the water. And so when I was walking into it, I was probably, out of anyone, if this movie was to disappoint someone, it would be me. Like, I was so worried walking into it. I was like, oh, I'm going to look like an idiot walking out of this when it's just okay, or just good enough, or bad even, for God forbid. And it's not. It's the best movie of the year. To me, it is far and away the best looking movie we have ever seen. It has the best visual effects we have ever seen. This movie rivals the motion capture, the mocap, in the new Planet of the Apes movie, especially War. There are the characters in here are great. The story is bigger, stakes are higher than the previous one. It's still a very simple story, but on the surface, when you go deeper into it, it means a lot more. The characters do get a lot more here, where it's no longer just about this love triangle with the kind of from the first one, where you had originally you had Jake Sully, and then you had Neytiri, but then you had Tsute, who was kind of supposed to mate with Neytiri. In this film, they have a family now, and they have to take care of that family. And I was genuinely shocked at how this film took risks and that it did ballsy things where they kill off characters. Spoiler alert, they kill off characters that you don't expect them to kill off. Where when certain characters died, I was, oh, they're going for it, and it got emotions out of me. You know, James Cameron is great at doing sequels, and he's done it again. Zoe Saldana as Neytiri is just great. She's, in my opinion, behind Andy Serkis as the greatest motion capture performer we've ever seen. She's incredible in this. And there's a scene on the ship where she's got to threaten some people, and you believe it, and you're genuinely scared for these characters. I mean, the action sequences are great. The world building is great. Everything about this movie I loved. There wasn't a single moment where I didn't love. So when it came down to it, this is a movie that I've been so excited for so many years, and it finally paid off. And so that's why it comes in at number 1 on my top 10 favorite movies of 2022.